So Live Alive was a game that really caught my eye when it was announced for the Nintendo Switch, just because honestly, I had never even heard of it before. It was a Super Famicom game that was done back, during the Super Nintendo era, and it was a game that never came stateside. It never got a translation. There are lots of RPGs from that time frame that unfortunately never came across the pond. Now, many of them are games that you hear people talk about, but Live Alive was a game that not really many people talked about. So when this game was announced as coming to the Nintendo Switch, I was kind of interested in it. I kind of prefer action RPGs more so than just traditional turn-based RPG games, but I wanted to check this game out. I wanted to give this game a chance because something about the game just really resonated with me. I think it was the fact that there were so many different ways to play the game because of all the different stories that were self-contained within this game. It's not just one game where it's just one story from beginning to end. There's multiple small stories and smaller games within the overall game itself. Now, I was interested to see how this all would translate to a full-on experience. Like, were there really going to be any differences? Was there really going to be anything that made these individual games sort of stand out from one another? Now, I haven't completed the game yet. I've completed 3 chapters. There are 6 chapters. Initially, you unlock 2 additional chapters after completing the initial 6 chapters. But I want to talk about my experience thus far. Yes, I'm completely late to this party, but I don't care. I don't care because it's what I feel like talking about today. Unfortunately, I've been playing this game strictly in handheld mode while I was over at my grandparents' house, taking care of my grandpa and helping him out. So I don't have any of my own footage. We're just going to use trailers and stuff like that, but it shouldn't really be about that. It should be more about the words I'm saying, because really none of my videos are really masterpieces when it comes to editing or looking at my disgusting face. But hey, you know what? It's about the words. So Live Alive, like I said, it's an interesting game because of the fact that it's not just one huge overarching story. There's multiple stories within it. Now, I didn't really follow a certain path or anything like that. I don't know if there is sort of a predetermined path, kind of like a Mega Man style game from back in the day where you fight certain bosses first so that you could get their abilities and then, the rest of the game gets easier. But I think the Mega Man sort of comparison is a good comparison because, you could just play whatever story you want right out of the gate. Now, the first story I did was the prehistoric story because I like dinosaurs and stuff like that. I like, things of the old Cretaceous period and Jurassic period stuff. So I jumped into this story. It was obviously the first story, kind of, if you go in like a timeline manner of this game. So I checked that out and there was like no talking like whatsoever. It was all done just based sort of on like a little emotional icons that would pop up. And at first I was kind of like, well, that's confusing, but like I got it. Like very quickly I understood it. During the prehistoric era, there was no English. There was no, sort of language that people were talking. It was like, ooh, and grunts and, me man, you, me Tarzan, you Jane, stuff like that. So there wasn't really a full-on language that you could do. And you would feel like in an RPG that would detract for the experience, but it really doesn't, because of the fact that they managed to sort of convey messages just in a more traditional way of just raw emotions rather than, actual language. I like the combat of the game. I think the combat is very awesome. Now, the combat itself is kind of something that is overarching no matter what story it is. It's basically kind of like a bit of a strategy RPG, I would say, as in there's a grid system and then you could do certain attacks that will hit no matter where you are in the grid system, or you can actually just get closer and do like certain other attacks that you can only do from that. By moving yourself on the character grid, you basically take up like experience time, and then it'll give the other opportunities to other people on the map. So like enemies, like if you make like 3 or 4 moves, then the enemy will also get a turn then. But if you're managed to do it in a way that, doesn't take up any movement, you can actually get a couple attacks in before the enemy gets a chance to attack. So kind of basic in that sense, but it does work well and it does sort of play well. Now there's also like a marking system on your mini map that essentially tells you where to go next. So it's very streamlined in that aspect. I did enjoy that. I thought that was really fun. I thought the prehistoric thing was very fun. You could like get, as you level up, you get different things like the ability to like fart on an enemy and throw poop on an enemy. Like, you know, it's funny to me. It's kind of lowbrowish humor, but it was funny to me. But the game, I completed that and I was like, okay, I'm having a good time with this. But the game really clicked with me with the Western thing, because I like, you know, the whole, you know, little Western town and the sand town and going through this little town. And the Western thing really could have been a freaking movie. Like, that's how good the writing was with this. I absolutely loved it. I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but it starts out with like you getting in a little bit of trouble and somebody's trying to take you down, but then you have to work with the other person because there's a bigger issue going on. You have to utilize the townsfolk to work with you as well. And like, the game has voice acting here, and the voice acting is really freaking good. And the gameplay, there's a huge deviation in the gameplay. Like, you hardly battle in this thing, but it works so damn well. It works so damn well, and I was just absolutely blown away. I was blown away by the Western story. I was like, holy shit, this game, this is not what I just thought it was going to be something where it was like you played the same game in different time frames. And yeah, they would have, you know, self-contained stories, but, you know, whatever. It wasn't going to be anything that crazy, but the Western thing really opened up my eyes to this. And now the third one I ended up doing was the Ninja one. And then there's a whole new mechanic that's added into the Ninja one where basically it's like stealth based. Instead of moving on a 2D plane just from left to right, you move on a 3D plane. In this Western one and in the prehistoric one, it is kind of like a 3D plane, but the camera is a different camera, so it's kind of behind the character. So it feels more like a 3D stealth game, more so than just an RPG game. There's a mechanic where you can make yourself invisible to enemies because you don't want to really battle the enemies. You want to do whatever your overarching mission is that you get at the start of the mission. And I'm like, I have played 3 completely different games. Yes, at their core, there are similarities, but these games all feel like 3 completely different games written by completely different people because they are written by completely different people, and they all feel unique and fresh, and it's like they don't take very long. You know, a couple hours, 2-3 hours, you could get through one of these stories, and it's such a brilliant game. It's such a brilliant game. It uses that 2D HD art style that we've seen with games like Octopath Traveler and whatnot. And like, you know, I always thought that art style looked nice, but it shines in this game. It looks so good in this game because when you take a game like Octopath, you know, you have kind of the motif going through the game. There's something that is always kind of constant. There's something always the same. The characters look similar. You know, the enemies are all done in a certain art style. But with this game, everything, it honestly really feels like a bunch of different games in one. And the fact that other people wrote these games and directed these games really makes them feel like unique experiences. I've just been gushing about this game, and you're going to say, well, what are your complaints? I don't know that I have any complaints. Maybe if a certain story doesn't resonate with you, or, you know, the prehistoric one, sometimes it was a little bit confusing at times because of the lack of any sort of, you know, talking in the game. So you kind of had to figure out things on your own. There was like 1 or 2 times where I got kind of stuck just for like a few minutes or whatever, but it was nothing major. Like, I ended up figuring it out kind of soon. But like, I just absolutely love this game. I absolutely love how fresh this game feels. And the funny thing is, it's not a fresh game. It's a game that came out on the Super Famicom, okay? This is an old game for our friends over in Japan and stuff like that, but it's awesome. It's awesome. You don't need like, I love games that are visual treats on the eyes. You know, I love games that are pushing the boundaries of video games and just what you could do with graphics and stuff like that. But sometimes you could play a traditional game that has, you know, a more basic art style, but like, you could tell that there's passion in that. You could tell that there's a lot of care that went into this, and that's what this game feels like to me. I understand that at the time of uploading this video, everyone and their mother and their grandmother is talking about Xenoblade Chronicles 3 because that's a big modern RPG that's going to take you hundreds of hours with epic stories and stuff like that. And that's cool. You know, I love games like that sometimes, but sometimes I just want to pick up a game and play it and then get that satisfaction, get that feeling from this. And the fact that all of these stories are kind of broken up into smaller stories really gives you that satisfaction. It's honestly the perfect RPG for someone who doesn't want to sit there and play a game for 12 plus hours in a sitting. You just want to play for a little bit. You could get a lot of satisfaction. You can get a lot of progress done with this. So if you've been waiting for this game, if you've been kind of on the fence about it, go ahead and buy it. If you're an RPG fan who enjoys lowbrow humor from times and just really interesting story mechanics and really interesting storytelling with a really fun combat system and then a gameplay system which is like ever expanding based on which story you're doing, you really owe it to yourself to check out this game. I'm kind of worried that maybe the game won't sell all that well because of the fact that, it is kind of overshadowed by Xenoblade Chronicles 3, but this is a brilliant game. Absolutely brilliant, top to bottom. Weird as hell. There are some very weird things in this game, but if you can enjoy that style of writing and enjoy that style of humor, this is a fantastic game. I can't believe how much I've ended up enjoying this game. I bought it because, I liked the way it looked. Spawn Wave, I was like, oh, it's really good. Spawn Wave, and I don't agree a lot on certain video games. He made me buy, what was it, Jedi Outcast 2 on the Switch, and I was like, what the hell is this? This is a piece of shit. And he was like, no, man, it's a great game. It's a great game. I'm like, it's just nostalgia talking, idiot. This game stinks. This game stinks. But I could definitely agree with him on this because it's a special game, man. It's one of the most enjoyable RPGs that I've ever played. And I'm going to put it right up there with some of my favorite RPGs of all time. I'll put it up there with games like Shining Force 3 and Grandia 2. Like, I'm just having a blast with this game. So I hope you guys enjoyed my little rambling on Live Alive. I think I'm saying that right. Initially I was saying Live Alive, and then I heard people saying Live Alive. So I don't know. I'm just going to go along with the trend so I don't look like a weirdo. If you watch this video, thank you. I appreciate you. Obviously, I'm very late to this party. No one's going to give a shit about what I have to say about this game, but I wanted to talk about it because I think this game is fantastic. This game deserves all the success in the world, and this game proves that you don't need to have, crazy graphics and crazy stuff going on with your game. As long as you make a game that's really good from top to bottom, you make a game that's really fun, and a game that can be a little bit unique, and I think this is one of the most unique RPGs I have ever played. So go check out Live Alive. Awesome game. I highly recommend it. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Later.